Do you argue a lot about your finances? And do you ever wonder how you can have oneness in your finances? Well, we're going to talk about that today. Stay tuned.
You don't want to miss it.
You're listening to Marriage Mania, where we are audacious, sagacious, and tenacious for the Lord to uphold godly marriages and to raise fervent children who are countercultural and stand for biblical truth.
Welcome back. I'm Tanya.
And I'm Michael.
And today we're going to get into this conversation about having oneness in our finances. How do we do that? All right, let's get into it. So, do you ever argue about your finances? And how do you have oneness when you're arguing? How do you figure this out together? How do you become one with your money? And we've been talking a lot about finances over the last series. This is a series, and we've been talking a lot about this over the last podcast, so you can check that out. So, Michael, let's talk about how do you get to have a oneness if you're constantly arguing about your money and finances, and it's just very stressful. It could be so stressful on the marriage.
Yes. And, I like what you're saying about oneness and making sure that we are one with, we're one with our money.
Yes. Let's be
one. That sounded profound.
One with our money.
But we want to make sure everybody realizes we're on a series to talk about finances from a marriage perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Since finances can be a major source of stress on the marriage and a leading cause of divorce. If our finances are unhealthy, our marriages tend to be unhealthy, but God wants our finances to be healthy and unified, and we're acting as one with our finances, and we're growing our finances in a healthy way so we can invest in God's kingdom. Our finances are His. We're simply managers of His money, as we see in the parable of the talents. And the primary purpose of our finances is not only to provide for our family, but also to tithe 10% of our gross income and everything that comes in and give it to the church and missionaries and other ministry. That's our primary purpose of the finances that God has entrusted to us. And we need to have that kingdom mindset. And in our last podcast, we talked about having a good, solid, biblically minded financial advisor to help us have healthy finances headed in God's directions. Finances are such a big part of all of life, and finances are a big part of marriage and family. So it's crucial that we're operating as one. And so we really want to dive into that aspect of our finances. Are our finances one? Are we acting as one? Are we in substantial agreement in the direction that we want to go with our finances? Or are we in substantial disagreement? And that's causing a lot of discord, a lot of fighting, a lot of hiding things or operating behind each other's backs with things. And then things explode in an argument when we find out about something. It's, we want that oneness, that agreement to where we're unified as a couple. Finances are helping to unify us as a couple. And we want to talk about how we can have that. So what do you think, Tony? What kind of things can we do to make sure our finances shout, we're one? We're unified.
We are one. Yeah.
We're of one mind. We're one in the spirit. We are one in the Lord.
We are one.
Yeah, we're not living separate lives. Our finances aren't going in separate directions. We're kind of going in the same direction.
Well, that's a definite red flag if we're going in a separate direction. But to bring the oneness aspect to it is really understanding our roles in marriage. We need to make sure that we understand what the husband's roles are and the wife's roles are. And we talk a lot about biblical roles in marriage. We also want to make sure that people can come together and bring that oneness into those marital roles, because yes, we are one, but we're two separate people, but we're just becoming one. I know we talk a lot about that. We do have Bible studies that really talk about the biblical role, that you can check those out. The covering, the role of a biblical husband, and the helper, the role of biblical wife. And those Bible studies, they really help to dig deep to understand that marital oneness, that unity, especially for individual roles. And I think that's important because that plays into the finances, and that's something.
Yeah, it plays into everything. You can get that oneness operating in every aspect of the marriage, then that will spill over and also into the finances. But you got to start with that base of just kind of understanding what oneness is all about and how to achieve that in a biblical manner. And those resources can really help.
Yeah, and those resources are great. And a lot of people talk a lot about how it's impacted their marriage. And those are also available on our website at marriagemaniaministry.com. And so, when we're talking about that oneness, I think that plays a lot into it. And it also just us being upfront and honest with one another. Sometimes people get married, and at the beginning of their marriage, they don't talk about these finances. And then one person brings in a bunch of debt and the other person's debt free, and they're like, oh my gosh, I just acquired $30,000. What are we going to do? And then it causes stress at the very beginning. So I think honesty is very important. Like, hey, I know we're getting ready to get married. I have this school debt. I have this going on. And I think that kind of helps that perspective. But then also, if you're married and you're doing things behind your spouse, then we're not living the life that God intended for us to live as one, and we're doing things secretly, and we're not fulfilling our biblical roles that we're talking about. And that causes so much conflict and all kinds of issues.
Yes, I completely agree. And that's well stated. The secrets in marriage are not a good idea about anything.
No.
If we're hiding things and doing with our finances, buying something, not letting our spouse know. I mean, just doing those kind of things can undermine a marriage, can undermine trust.
Well, unless we're buying like a Christmas gift, or like, gifts are different.
Definitely an exception there.
Yeah,
but keep those secret, but yes.
Yeah, but that's like a surprise kind of thing. And I just want to make sure, because somebody could say, oh, well, what about buying a secret gift or, surprise? I know for us, I can't really keep that secret, because since you do the finances, you kind of see like, hey, what was that charge for this? And I'm like, oh man, can you just skip that right now? Cause like, I don't want you to ask me this question.
I have the same problem. Like when you order something on Amazon and it gives out an alert and there's no way to put and a way to do it discreetly, there's no option to choose, secret purchase. Don't send out an email to everybody that's on this account letting them know something was purchased. I'm like, I think anything on Amazon for a gift.
But I think those are,
I want you to know about it.
But those are little things that we can say, okay, don't look at that right now. And then you kind of know that, the person's getting you a gift, but I guess the secrets would be like, I've got this credit card and it's hidden, and I've got a separate PO box, and, my money's going there, and I'm doing all these secret things. And then your husband finds out that you've been buying all this stuff, and then it just blows up into a massive situation. So like, keeping secrets is not a good thing unless
to bite you big time.
Unless you're doing a gift.
Yes, right. And very bad financial decisions are often made unilaterally without accountability or oversight. If we're hiding it, what's the reason? Oftentimes we got to be thinking our spouse is not going to agree with this purchase, so I'm just going to do it anyways. And there's a good chance that it might not be a wise purchase. You're discounting your what should be your best advisor in a situation. What do you think about this purchase? Do you think this is a wise purchase? And get that feedback and talk about it and have that accountability.
Yeah. And I was going to say too, on that point, when you're saying, talk to your spouse if you're going to buy a new car, like say you're going to go buy a car and you don't even talk to your spouse, and you come home with a brand new car. It kind of feels like a betrayal, to the other spouse, because it's like, does my opinion not matter? Did you not want to talk with me? Like maybe we could have picked a color together. Like, it just feels like hurtful to do those things without including your spouse. And that's that whole oneness that we're talking about is, we're going to go buy a car. We're going to do it together. Like we're going to research it together, determine what kind of model we want, what kind of car, how much we can afford. Like those are the things that are so important. And that just brings our finances and our oneness together.
Right. And when we're operating as one, then we got to be thinking, this is not my money. This is not your money. This is our money. Mm-hmm. And since it's our money, I can't spend if I spend on something, that doesn't just affect me. It affects the whole family. It affects our whole finances. They're all intertwined together. I mean, I should certainly ask, hey, what do you think? Are you in agreement with making this purchase? I can't just make a big purchase without asking,
Right.
as is this something that we agree on? And if not, let's talk out about it. Why do you not think that this? I like this purchase. Why do you? And let me ask questions to kind of get your perspective on why you think this is not a good purchase. And we should talk calmly about it and just kind of learn each other's perspectives on that. And maybe we can come to an agreement. And I see your perspective. Maybe it's not a good idea to get it right now. Maybe, a little bit in the future because of whatever's going on in our finances right now. I can see that. I see your point there. You may be a little bit more worried about that than I am. And out of respect for your feelings on that, then we'll wait. I don't need to get this right now. Those kind of things can be hammered out when we talk about these purchases. And we see our finances as one, and then we can make these unified decisions that we both are in agreement about instead of I make a purchase and I know you're going to explode at me for making that purchase. That's just not a good idea for the health of the relationship.
And you and I we're different, but we also are the same when it comes to any kind of spending because we don't make rash decisions. Like we really think through things and talk about them. So even if I wanted to buy a couple outfits, I'll put them in the cart, which, he can see, but it's not that I'm going to just go buy them right away. I'm going to talk to him about it or say, okay, do I really is this something I necessarily need? Those are things that we do. We've taught our daughter not to just jump to conclusions, say, oh my gosh, that's the last thing. I need it right now. And I'm going to purchase it.
Don't make an emotional purchase, an impulse buy. If we can let it settle, and if maybe a week from now I still want it and it makes sense, then maybe we consider it. But if we don't have to get it right now, it's not a necessary item for just the life of the house.
Right.
It's not like food or one of our budgeted items. It's something extra. It's something I want. It's a desire. Well, let me just mull it around for a little bit and just see if I still have that desire next week, or if it's just something that struck me in the moment,
Right.
And then when the moment's
like
gone,
the fun
I don't
things
really want it anymore.
Yeah, like the fun things you see at Costco.
Yeah.
It's like
impulse buying capital. They got some marketers at that place.
We love Costco. We really do. But they have so many amazing things. And you're like having to question yourself, should I get this? And then you're like, wait a minute.
I didn't come for that.
I'm going to the milk aisle.
But they know how to it's like they're constantly rotating stuff in and out. So it's like, you're worried because it's like, it might not be there tomorrow.
Right.
I rotate it right out of there. And it's like, man, so they know how to kind of grab you.
So it's a good test. If you want to test some of your buying purchases, go to Costco and see if you can say no to
Watch
some
out
of those.
for these marketing techniques.
Yeah.
There's a purpose to these things.
Yeah.
And they know how to put stuff right in front as you're coming in or right at the register in order to kind of grab you with not much time to think, and you just make an emotional impulse buy. I'll get that. And
but we love
you do
Costco.
enough of those things, and you can kind of hurt your finances when you look over the month about how many impulse buys you've done. And so it's oftentimes, that's the method we have, and we've heard that from other Christian financial experts, is never make an impulse buy. If you didn't come for that, if it's depending on how much it costs, at least wait a day, maybe a week, maybe even a month. If it's really expensive, to kind of like, okay, I need to think about that. Let me make sure I'm not just making an emotional decision. Let me do the math. Let me logically think about this. Let me see if I still like it tomorrow. Because if I don't, it's like, okay, well, that was just something that just kind of struck my emotions in that moment.
Exactly.
Good sales technique.
Yeah.
What about joint accounts? I know we talked about that in other podcasts, but we ought to bring that up here again briefly when we're talking about marriage oneness. We're real big fans of having joint accounts and not separate accounts, because that's like a firm statement in your finances are a big statement of priority. Where you spend your money is and how you do your finances tells you what's most important to you. Just look at what you're spending money on, and that'll tell you that's most important to you. So when it comes to marriage oneness, to have your finances just shout, we are one, can really be a strong aspect that can bring your marriage closer together in unity. So we're strong advocates of, let's not have separate money. My money is over here. I spend my money this way. You spend your money that way. And we're even, we think of it as my money and your money. This is yours to spend. This is mine to spend. Just have joint accounts where it's all just merged together as one, and every purchase you make is agreed upon. And so you're getting that oneness, and you're not getting upset that you made a purchase on what? Why did you do that? That doesn't make any sense. It's a great exercise in really coming to an agreement on something that you're going to have to do every day. Now, most of it's budgeted. And if you agree, you've already talked together about what your budget is, what you're going to spend, and how much you're going to spend on things, then a lot of your purchases don't have to be discussed. Like, we go to the grocery store, do I have to discuss whether it's okay to get milk? No.
Right.
Because it's like, we've already agreed how much we're going to spend on groceries, and we know what's, so there's a lot of freedom there to just get what's in the budget. But then it's like, since we've agreed on a budget, then, and which is just a plan for how we're going to spend our money, when something's outside of the plan, then it's like, that should be an alert. This is not something we've discussed in one of our budgeted items. This is something I should discuss with my spouse. Are you in agreement with this purchase? This is our money.
Right.
I would like to get this. This is kind of a cool little thing. You okay with me getting it? Most of the time with us, we're in. You can say, yeah, go ahead,
Right.
But if it's a significant purchase, it might be like,
let's think about
that for a minute.
Actually, let's pray about it. Yeah.
Let's think about it. Make sure we're, not making an emotional decision. And, so.
Yeah, I totally agree, because joint checking accounts are so important, because if you have a different checking account, you just don't have the accountability, and you just don't know what could be happening. And I'm not saying that something bad could be happening, but it's just not giving that accountability. Like you said, it's so important to have that account. If you're married, you should have one checking account together.
There's some people that will have like mad money kind of things, where it's like, okay, well, let's just, they'll budget and say, you get X amount of dollars this month to just spend however you want, without any kind of accountability, and that, I've heard other Christian financial experts kind of go that route as well, as that's okay when, you have $200 this month and I'll have $200 a month to just kind of spend however on coffee and whatnot. But I don't know, as far as like an exercise in oneness, it's just, I think it's a better idea to just spend that kind of stuff on pooled money. And maybe have an agreement if it's something really small, like a cup of coffee. You don't have to ask for my permission to get a cup of coffee.
Well, I also feel, even though we know we have like two separate accounts or something like that, it just still makes me feel like, okay, well, you can do what you want with your money, and I can do what I want with my money. And so it doesn't really, to me, compute that it's a oneness thing. It's like, we are together. If I have $200 that I can spend on something, then it's okay for me to do it out of our own account, or get cash and go out there and spend the $200 in cash somewhere, but it just seems a little bit odd for me, thinking biblically with oneness, to have two separate checking accounts. I mean, I'm not saying it's something, that's bad.
Right? We're just giving our suggestions.
Right.
And that's not, when you're talking about oneness, it's kind of an overall thing where it's like, you need to do, when you want to create agreement and marital oneness in your marriage, that doesn't mean you lose yourself, and there's no individuals, and you can't have, your separate hobbies and your separate things. That's not what we're saying, but overall, your marriage needs to shout. We do the majority of our stuff, wherever you can find to kind of do together. The more you do together helps facilitate that oneness, that agreement, and just that exercise of just how to come to an agreement on things, and be in agreement on things, and not be frustrated. I can't believe he bought that, but it's his mad money, so I guess that's all right. I can't really say anything about it. It's like, why don't we have some agreement on that, on everything that we're purchasing? We even need to kind of like take out of our vocabulary mine and yours, my car, your car, my daughter, your daughter, my son, your son. It's our, the more we can say our, that just helps get us in the mindset of, we are operating as one. We're merging our differences together. We still keep our individuality, but we have this relationship here that needs to kind of operate in agreement as one, and moving in the same direction. And the more that we can kind of merge those differences together and come to an agreement, meet each other in the middle in some way on stuff that we disagree, and we talk about things and we come to that agreement, the more that we can be headed in the same direction, the more that we can be unified, and the more it helps facilitate that sense of security and oneness and really building the relationship. We kind of do things separate, the more we just kind of tend to live separate lives, and the more, and before you know it, we're doing more and more things separately, and we've now just had this kind of loose partnership, and that marriage relationship kind of weakens. The natural state of relationships is to kind of disintegrate if we don't do things that strongly bring it together, like dating, and finances is a big part of that. We merge our finances together. That just can really help bond that relationship. What other aspects of our finances can help facilitate marriage oneness?
Just talking about it, maybe on a monthly basis. I know that we usually talk about the budget. You come up with like a little document every month and just show our budgets. Like we wrote down all our categories, the different things that we spend on, like miscellaneous or groceries or kids stuff, whatever. We have those categories listed, and I created a spreadsheet when we first got married, and just kind of had all the formulas in there and calculated it all, and just allow you to put it in there. And so we've had that for many, many years. And then you just kind of write it out and have like a little 5-minute budget meeting every month. And so, hey, we've reached this budget. We went over budget on this or that. And it makes me feel, as the wife, it makes me feel secure because I know that he's taking care of it. That is his thing. He enjoys looking at the numbers and identifying everything that needs to be saved. And so for me, I'm like, okay, yeah, that sounds great. So tell me where I need to, not spend as much on groceries or whatever.
Yeah, great points. And, a budget is simply a plan.
Yeah.
It's you're telling your money where it's going instead of just like being lost at where it all went. It's you're designating how much money you're going to spend on groceries, how much money you're going to spend on entertainment, how much money you're going to spend on the house, on just TV and internet and
vacations, things like that.
And to come together and agree on that. This is how much we want to spend on each of these items, and then track it. I know for me, I balance the checkbook every morning. If I do it every morning, it takes like 5 minutes, and I account for every dollar and put it in the tracker. Oh, we just spent something in the entertainment category. Boom, and then we have a monthly meeting at the end of the month to see, what did we spend in each category. We can see as we're spending all along. We just pull up the Excel spreadsheet online and say, well, are we under budget here on food? How much money do we still have left to spend on food? And we can pull that up. But at the end of the month, we talk about it and say, we were over budget in this category. Let's look to see where the money went, because you can nickel and dime stuff, spend $20 here in one category, and you don't realize how much you're spending unless you put it in a category and say, oh wow, we've already spent this much in this category. Maybe I need to tone it down for the rest of this month. I didn't realize, we spent that much. And that really helps talking about these things in a non-confrontational way, because we haven't discovered something horrible and now we're yelling at each other. This is just, we're talking about it to plan it out in the future, where we want the money to go, where we agree that we're going to spend on each thing, and we agree to stick to that budget. And anything out of budget spending that comes up, some desire we want, we're going to talk that out. I want to get this. What do you think? Am I okay? And, as a spouse, it's like, I really want my spouse to be happy. It's like, I want her to have that,
Right.
But, if it's like, for me, if I'm thinking that's not a wise purchase, I might say something,
Right.
Or do you want to pray about that just a little? Just think about it. Make sure it's not an emotional thing that just kind of caught you in the moment, But it's, but that's the way, having that plan, having that budget is a great way to just talk it out on where you want the money to go, and then reviewing it on where it went, and where we might need to tighten up. We spent a lot on entertainment this month, and we went way over the budget. Maybe we need to not eat out as much or go to as many movies this much as much next month or something.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with everything that you're talking about. And what I keep hearing is like, we have to be able to communicate with each other, and communicating back and forth, sharing information, and like being honest. Like we talked about at the beginning of this podcast, is just communication. And sometimes if we're not communicating, that leads to conflict, and the conflict can snowball because you're getting frustrated over something that you spent last year and then this year. And then, it just continues to continue. And now you have unresolved conflict that is because of your finances, because you're not communicating. And so, that's one thing that we love to talk about too in marriage ministry is, how can we communicate? Michael wrote a book called The Conflict Manual, and it's just a biblical approach on how to communicate biblical way by really looking at the different communication styles that you have. And so I think understanding the communication styles that you have with your spouse will help you to be able to communicate about your finances, because you're able to say, I did purchase this gift and I should have talked to you. And you're coming towards your spouse with asking for forgiveness. And so communication is huge, and that's a big key in marriage. And a lot of problems do happen because of our communication and our finances. So we really do need to look at that. And you can check that out as a great resource that we have on marriagemaniaministry.com to really work on that communication style.
Yeah, great point, because the problem's not so much our issues, but how we're talking about those issues.
Mm-hmm.
We all have issues, even profound ones that are huge, but what's most important is how we talk about them, how I'm going to address that. Am I presenting my position, how I feel about it in a way that you can receive, or am I just unloading my anger on you and frustration, which is making you defensive, and just you're unloading your frustration at me? And so, one of the biggest topics that people argue about is money, finances. It's not the only big topic. There's child rearing or sex. Those are like the big three, I think. And then, there's other issues that may be particular to you that you're arguing about. But what's most important is, like, if you can use good, solid biblical technique. The Bible has a lot to say about how we speak to one another. And if we can use good, solid biblical technique on how we speak to one another in a way that can be received, that can go a long way in handling our differences, because our differences are usually what rubs us the wrong way. They say opposites attract, but then opposites attack. They begin to rub us the wrong way because I have this personality, you have an opposite personality, and we realize it's like, well, you think very differently than I do. And that can cause a lot of disagreement. And that happens in our finances and what they call, at least what I call, money languages, different money personalities. The two big ones are like savers and spenders. What do you think about those? I mean, those can, like, if you've got one spouse that just is a big saver, they like to save money, and the other one just likes to spend money, more likely that's going to be a source of conflict. Because the savers, that's usually, a lot of times that has some anxiety driven behind it, because it's like, I'm nervous about having some big expense, and I want money there to be able to cover when the HVAC goes out or the roof goes out, and we're living paycheck to paycheck, and I want to save it. And you keep going out there spending money on boats and cars and four-wheelers, and because they're a spender. They see money as enjoyment. I want to enjoy my money. I don't want it just sitting in a bank account, and both mindsets are biblical. God says in Ecclesiastes 5:18 that there's nothing better than to live, drink, and enjoy the fruits of your labor. So we are to enjoy our money, but God also says in Proverbs 6:6-10, go to the ant, look to the ant who saves during the good times. So when the wintry seasons come and things are lean, you have money that you can live on, and so we need to have emergency savings. So when the roof goes out, we can pay for the roof because there's money in savings to pay for the roof. So there needs to be a balance. And what can be great is if we know how to communicate, then the saver and the spender can both actually keep each other in check. And if you can meet each other in the middle, then that's awesome, where the saver lives a little and the spender saves a little, and so you've got that balance of saving and enjoying life. We both tend to be savers. So when we first got married, we like didn't do much. We like wanted to put our money away. We hated to spend money until we realized we're out of balance here. So we
need to enjoy life a little
bit and go on some vacations. It's okay to spend a little money since we're saving. So we're saving and enjoying. We created a better balance in there. But when you're both of the same money language, then you got to be intentional to do that balance. And when you're two different money languages, then that can clash. So you that's where if you're doing your own thing and you're just spending without checking with your spouse because you want to spend and we should be enjoying our money, and the saver just gets upset and now you're yelling at each other. But if you can actually meet over your finances and come to an agreement and meet each other in the middle and balance each other out in those two kind of extreme areas on the spectrum of saver and spenders, and that's the sweet spot, and that's what you're going for.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yep.
There's other money languages out there too, like your big spender money language, who's like they see money as a status. They like to be the big man on campus. Drinks for everyone. So you have that. You have your giver personalities who love to just they see money as gifts. Saying I want to be able to give it away. They love, and that's very biblical to be givers. God wants us to be givers, and giver personalities do that very easily. Those that don't have that giver personality have to be more intentional about tithing to the church and giving to ministries and giving to those that have need. And if you have one spouse that's a giver and one that's not so much, hopefully they can find a balance in there. Or your entrepreneur money language, where it's like money is achievement. I want to like produce a business and sell stuff and make money that way. So you got to recognize these are different ways that God made us, different attitudes towards money, and none of them are necessarily wrong. They're just different. We need to recognize our own. I tend to be a spender, so then I need to be better at saving. Or I tend to be saver, so I need to have more intentionality about enjoying life some, and recognizing the different money personalities of what my spouse may be, seeing how they are, being okay with it and not like they're wrong, just different. And let's try to come and meet each other in the middle and balance each other out instead of clashing with each other.
Totally agree. And I think this was a great conversation around having oneness and, trying to not do things separately and just coming together and doing life together as one, and with your finances. That would help you to minimize any kind of conflict when it comes to finances, and also just really understanding, what God's design is for marriage. And like we talked about with the biblical roles, Bible studies for husbands and wives, and the conflict manual, all these things. We have plenty of resources that you can find on marriagemaniaministry.com. I hope this podcast encouraged you, because we want to try to walk in righteousness. We want God's favor upon us in our lives as we're walking in the truth and trying to live biblical lives with a biblical marriage, with a biblical worldview, and just really being wise with our money, being wise with the money that God has given us. Because like we've talked about in different podcasts, first, the money belongs to Him, and everything after that, He gives us that opportunity to be able to use it for life, to be able to provide for our families and clothes on our back and everything. And so we want to be grateful, and having that oneness, it just brings the unity of the marriage closer, and you're able to share life together without having to be so stressed or keeping secrets or, having debt that you can't pay, but you're doing it together. And that's the whole key, is doing finances God's way. And so we appreciate you being here. If you haven't checked out these finance series, check them out. Until next time.
God bless.